everybody? Today we are doing a top 10 bikini posing tips that you guys should all know about. And make sure to stay tuned till the end because we're gonna actually have some bonus tips as well.
We spent all night figuring these out. These are some awesome tips. Stay tuned and give it a like.
Tip number 1, make sure you only pick the poses that accentuate your physique and fit your personality.
Absolutely. A lot of times you'll see a girl trying to be a sexy girl because she thinks that's what she's supposed to do on the bikini stage, but she's really not that person. The judges can see it, the audience can see it. Just be yourself and find what fits you best. So here's an example of sexy posing. As you notice, the sexy isn't just in the body, it's in the face and her head movements, her mannerisms, her arms, her overall swagger, you know, how she's pushing, how fast she's moving. The moves are a little bit slower, a little bit more accentuated, looking back, things like that. So here's an example of the cutesy posing. As you notice, there's gonna be a lot faster movements, a lot more like little shakes. The mannerisms are totally different than the sexy one. Everything's just a little faster, a little bouncier. I think a lot of girls fit this place better than the other categories. And here's an example of a more elegant posing, okay? More standard posing, how you wanna say. It's for people who are just more conservative or that just like this posing better, or maybe aren't comfortable yet showing their true personality on stage. Everyone can pretty much do this type of posing.
All right, so as you can see, I did a few different styles of posing. Make sure to choose the one that fits you, not your favorite athlete or not one that you saw somebody do at a show, one that fits you.
That's the most important thing about posing. Pose true to yourself.
All right, so tip number 2 is only choose the poses that flatter your physique and don't drag on your routine, because I've seen so many times where girls really try to cram a lot of these poses that maybe aren't even that flattering for them into a short period of time. And what ends up happening is it goes super fast, it looks super rushed, and in turn it looks like they're nervous and shaky as well.
Yeah, but one of the things you should know for you local competitors, you only have about 15 seconds or so in your individual routine. So make sure you put only your best poses in there and you don't waste any time doing too many things in between.
For me personally, as a pro, honestly, I have one of the shortest routines amongst my peers, and I've done that for years, since I can remember. I always stuck with only the poses that were most flattering to me. I know a lot of other girls, especially on pro level, just really drag it out, and their routines last twice as long as mine, but I find that it's very beneficial to keep it to only the poses that are the most flattering for me. That way I can concentrate more on what I'm doing and I don't feel like I'm being rushed.
Another tip, guys, is always show your best angle to the middle of the judges. Okay, so what that means is when you pose to yourself, you're always posing, you do it to a mirror. When you pose to yourself, that's like the head judge being right in front of you. But what if you're off to the right or off to the left? How do you pose then? So we're gonna show you exactly what you do. So this is Ashley's best pose. Let's say Ashley gets moved to the right. So we say competitor number 1, trade place competitor number 3, right? So now the head judge is way over here. So Ashley is going to give the same pose, but turn her body at an angle towards now. You're the head judge. So now it looks exactly the same, but we've moved all around, okay? But it looks exactly the same to the head judge. Now, if Ashley posed to herself and you're the head judge, look what happens. Go ahead and pose to yourself now. It doesn't look the same. So she's not gonna get as many points this way as she would if she was facing the right way. And that's not the judge's fault for not realizing it, it's her fault for not posing the right way.
Next tip, make sure that you always stay within the box or as best as you can to it. And the reason why is because that's where the best lighting is gonna be, that's where the judges are gonna be able to see the best, and where all the good pictures are taken. There's the box for the reason.
Okay guys, so here's the middle box that's in the middle of the stage. I drew it, so sorry that it's so bad. But notice how she'll stay right in that box. I mean, she doesn't have to stay completely in it. It's not jail. She just has to move around, staying somewhat there. And also the good thing about the box is that that's generally where the best lighting on the stage is. And it's real important to be there because that's where pretty much everyone is going to be when they do their posing routine. And that way your lighting doesn't look different than someone else's lighting. And, you might get bad lighting if you're not in the box and everyone else gets good lighting, and then the next thing you know, you're at a disadvantage and you didn't even mean to be so.
So next up is make sure that you're always making eye contact with the judges and keep smiling. They're gonna judge you from the time you step on stage till the time you walk off.
So one of the things that a lot of people do is when they're looking around and smiling, they'll look at their boyfriends, their friends, they might even give a little wink to them. Just make sure you look only at the judges. And when you look at the judges, look at them with your eyes, not with your head, okay? So we have Brett shooting from the judge's perspective right now, so it's a little below us. Okay, so if we're posing and I look at him with my eyes, I'll look at him like this, and my neck looks really small, my head's right on my chest, okay? So you keep your head up, look at him with your eyes, and smile, and that's how you do it.
Next tip is to minimize your steps during transition. So the less steps, the better. It'll look a lot smoother.
Yeah, especially when you're going from your front pose to your back pose and you're taking too many steps, you should know your footwork and be able to hit your footwork and know your positioning. So this is an example of a good transition with minimal footsteps and I guess replacement. You notice how when she transitions, she just hits her footwork. She knows her spacing. She's practiced enough to know exactly where her feet need to be, so she doesn't need to adjust a whole bunch in between. So now we're gonna go into transitions where someone hasn't been practicing too much, they don't know their footwork, they're constantly adjusting and fidgeting, okay, doing all these little things, and you can see it's just not as clean. So especially when you get to this back pose and you start adjusting your feet, trying to find your right placement, you don't really look good when you're adjusting. You're not hitting your best pose. It's not the best for your glutes. Your hamstrings aren't popping. So just know your footwork, know where your feet need to be, and hit it once and stick to it.
The next tip is to work on that walk because it is so important. Because like I had mentioned, they judge you from the time you step on stage till the time you leave. So you really want to show a good first impression, show confidence.
Here's an example of the good walk. So this is her doing it right. You do notice she's walking foot over foot, not foot side by foot. She's twisting her hips, she's getting some hip movement. As you notice when she's walking forward, it looks like her waist is tiny, and that's because of all the hip movements that's happening. Now, in the back walk, she's going to walk a little bit more controlled, but still looks very loose. But you are trying to minimize any shaking that's going on by hitting your steps too hard, and Ashley's pretty much the queen of walking, I think, in the IFBB. Here is an example of a walk that's not as good. As you notice, her steps are less confident, they're shorter, she's not doing as much foot over foot, the hips aren't moving as much, and her posture isn't where it needs to be in terms of her posture. Now, in the back pose, when she's walking backwards, the main thing is she's just taking too hard of steps. Her back isn't arched enough, so she's getting folds in her glutes more than she needs. And it's a totally different look. And you will see people do this on stage, so make sure you practice, practice, practice.
So the next tip is to be aware that you are being judged at all times on stage. When you step foot on stage, when you step off, and everything and anything in between. So always make sure that you're nice and sucked in, you're smiling, that you're nice and poised, and you've got it together.
Absolutely, I think she nailed it on the head there. Just remember, you've trained for 16 weeks, 20 weeks, maybe a year, who knows how long you trained, and then you go and just lose focus. You're only on stage for 2, 3, maybe 5 minutes on like a hard competition. Just stay focused for those 5 minutes, smile, look at the judges, you can talk to your boyfriends or husbands later, okay? This time is for you to shine and to look at the judges and just show your best.
So the final tip that I have for you guys today is to be aware of how you're standing on the diagonal. It's very important that you're showing your number and that you stay poised and you're not just like, oh, I just got off stage, and then you're not just kind of throwing it away like, I already did my presentation, I have to stand with some girls, okay. Because they're still judging you, believe it or not. So keep smiling, keep eye contact, and keep poised.
Yeah, I think that's one of the most important things is that sideline pose. People underestimate it way too much. So when someone walks out and they see number 1, the winner of the show, or even 1 through 3, it's really easy for the judges to spot who's winning, who's top 3. But when they're trying to figure out who's 4th, 5th, and 6th, who's that first call out, they usually have to look at them on the sidelines and start. And that's why it takes a while for that first call out to happen. So your sideline pose is so important because that's when you're deciding if you're gonna get that first call out. And maybe if you got 4th, they think you're 4th, but they only saw you for a second, you get that first call out, gives you a chance to get to first. All right, so we're gonna show you some variation in between the sideline options of the poses. It's really, again, with bikini posing, there's no such thing as a wrong pose. This is one that Ashley uses quite a bit. There's a couple others that she'll show you here. Just make sure that your number's showing. So if you have not picked a side yet on where to pose on the sideline, make sure your left hip is forward because your number needs to be on the left side, and start practicing there. So here's another option. Again, left hip forward. So remember, that's the most important thing is that you show your number to the judges because they can't find where you're at if you're not there. Now, as far as this angle goes, she's showing her shoulders, she has a small waistline, her glutes popping. This one's gonna be a little bit it'll show the quad a little bit more than most because you see it's like a straight leg, which shows the quad. So if you're quad heavy, might not be the best pose for you. Ashley's not quad heavy, so this works for her too. All right, guys, bonus tips. So some of the things I see on stage that could be just a little bit better is One, I see hair being a big mistake. Make sure you have some hair like this where it's curly, but it's not full on 1980s pageant where it's all like this big. Okay, if you have, hair that's about here, it's okay to have extensions. They don't need to be expensive. Even Ashley uses clip-in extensions just for shows to add some volume. You can go straight, you can go curly, they're both perfectly acceptable. But if you go straight, don't be too flat, have a little bit of volume to it. Another thing is picking the right suit color, okay? A lot of people will pick the suit color just because they like the color pink or the color whatever. So make sure you pick a color that contrasts your skin, that creates some pop on stage, and then also make sure it's the right cut, okay? If you're conditioning, if you're just starting and it's a transformation contest, a really tight suit that's small isn't probably gonna be the best fit for your glutes at this time. So make sure you pick everything according to your physique. But the most important thing at the end of the day,
Just have fun!
if you like this video, give it a like, subscribe. We're gonna be putting these out all the time. We hope you learn. Honestly, we do this just so you guys can learn and be better. And then you can replace Ashley, be the next Ashley Kaltwasser.
No!
Here waiting for